Well, good evening, everybody, or afternoon, or morning. This is my Carpo Saturday afternoon rant. I'll try to consolidate this and get it into a format that's reasonable because I know I tend to go off and rant a lot. But that's what I do. I don't have a particular format. I don't have to cater to anyone's desires. I'm a free spirit, doing my own thing, and I'm really trying to remind myself to keep it that way. It's easy to get sucked into the chaos on YouTube. It's easy to get sucked into the chaos online in general. But it's no different than being sucked up with the drama on work, the workplace, talking about television shows. It's really all the same thing. I hear people talk about stupid disagreements on television shows that are totally set up and orchestrated, and they really don't get anything resolved. And I see that same issue reflected online with people who are casting stones back and forth, and none of them are really hitting the mark on either side. And even if they do, well, all we get are bloody heads from that. I don't like to talk about the drama online because it makes me feel like I'm acting superior or somehow authoritarian over the petty conflicts that people tend to have, because I get wrapped up in the same old drama as everyone else. And I'm not just talking about the people out there, the trolls, the haters. Those people don't affect me. I'm talking about the conflicts of interest that we have as individuals in the YouTube community, with the subjects that we particularly tackle. And I think it comes from many different sources, this angst, animosity, and I see the angles that people are coming from. Some of them are positions I've been in, some of them are perhaps positions I haven't seen yet, so I try to keep an open mind. I remember in the past when I was very much into conspiracy theories and whatnot, if you will give it that name. I choose not to, but it's all I can think of as a label. I would often hear from my elders, at what point do you let it go? At what point do you move forward and just try to do something with the information rather than talk about it? So I wanted to go through this list of phases of emotion and activity that come from finding out that you've been lied to. And I hope that maybe somebody out there can help me adjust this list a little bit, because I know for each person it's going to be different. But let me say, this is a personal list. This is one that I think that I went through in my search for truth, which I'm on continuously. Now let me be specific about something here. When I talk about knowledge or truth, I don't mean it in that pious sense that a lot of people carry with them, that I know the ultimate truth. I've had discussions with a few people online here that I really thought maybe might be open-minded, that have told me things like, I hold the truth that no one else knows, and nobody else has this truth, and it turns people off. It turns people away. So tact is really important. It goes back to what I've said in the past about wisdom. No matter how much knowledge you're born with, it does no good if you don't have the wisdom of a lifetime accrued in order to learn to distribute that knowledge so others can benefit from it. It does no good if one person knows something, if you can't teach it. And many people can't, so they get frustrated. I have to be specific about this. I'm not gaining any knowledge or insight to feel a piousness or a overwhelming authority on a subject. Some people just like to run the room. They like to know because they want to show. I like to know because I want to know. And I hope that it'll help me live a better life. Regardless of the details of why we're here or what we're supposed to be doing, regardless of whether there is or isn't a God or anybody's right or wrong, here we are as individuals. And regardless of whether this consciousness exists for real or it's just a figment created by the body, we have an obligation to live the best life we can while we're here. So as we're learning about things, we tend to go through this particular phases of awareness, I call it, and I'd like to start from the top. This would be the feeling that a person goes through when I should reformulate that sentence. These are the phases of awareness I feel like I went through when I started finding things out that I really didn't know if I even wanted to know. Such as how we've been lied to, how wars have been fought. Let's just take wars, for example. How all wars have been fought in the name of money. I know there are other reasons and other degrees, but for the most part it's always been about control, power, money. So when you find out about all these lies, the first thing that I felt was overwhelmed, a feeling of overwhelmed. And I had to process that for a while. After that came the awe, the amazingness of the complexity of this web that they've woven, that we've all woven. After that comes a degree of fear for some people. Now, I never really felt fear, but I guess I did when I look back on it, because to a degree I was saying, hey, we've got to get prepared, I have to get this, I have to get my food stockpiled, I've got to get generators, gasoline, have to be ready for the end of the world, which could come tomorrow. So after the fear and the awe come the sharing, and that comes the telling others part. And this can be the most important part. It's very crucial that people learn how to handle this, because often folks are still new to this array of knowledge, and they haven't quite been able to tie it in with daily life to understand how these things work. I don't understand how they work. But they go around telling others as if it's a fact, as if what they say is true. And it becomes a very complex issue where every single sports player and celebrity is an Illuminati agent, and everybody's out to get everybody. It becomes overwhelming to the point where, what are you going to do with it? So after the sharing and telling others comes the anger and resentment. The anger towards those who have lied to us, the anger towards the ignorant and those who have been fooled and choose to be fooled. And then this anger and resentment becomes reinforced by others who agree with our viewpoints. We find others have found this truth out too. And then we start building this anger and lashing out at others who don't have the desire to know, or are the, quote, sheeple, if you will. Then you hit a wall. You hit a point. I hit a point. A realization of the futility in complaining. A realization that among all of this, we have to find solutions to our problems. So there becomes a futility with that, to realize that you're aware of all these things you can't do anything about, or at least you feel you can't. There's a lot of activist groups that would say, write letters to your congressman. I'd like to think that that makes a difference, but it doesn't. Our electoral system is completely rigged. It always will be. This is the world we live in now. So what do we do? So after the realization of futility and complaining comes a period of contemplation and resistance, where I developed all my ideas, started to think again about all these things, how important they were, which ones really mattered, and what are we going to do with them. Then came the acceptance of reality, the complete acceptance that this is the world we live in, and we have to find out why we live in it. So then I turned around completely. I went through an education of history. I wanted to know Greek philosophy. I wanted to know how the Romans thought. I wanted to know how the Persians thought. I wanted to know how the Europeans still think. How the people in China think. Too many people have a view of China that it's just this closed door where people are just off to work as drones, or maybe that some people view them as just this communist, angry regime. China's a versatile place with billions of people. Every country has its shortcomings and its strengths. And we start to realize that. Find the education of history tells us that these things have been repeated over and over, and that we're not in any new situation now, except the fact that we have weapons that can destroy us instantly. After that came a reformation of my ideas and my processes, and how I was going to handle things. Then, an attempt to find rational answers in things that are otherwise irrational. An attempt to pick and choose through these different things that I'd learned and find which things can we actually deal with. And I'm still in that process. That's where I'm at right now. My final note on that would be in the end, seems to come a conflict with people who are at different points of that reality chart. All those different feelings, the fear, the anger, the resentment. there are a lot of people out there who all feel the same about these situations, but they're at different points in their understanding. So some are passive, at a passive point, but they're still angry. Others are angry, but they know they need to be passive, or more passive. The reason why I mention handling it with a calm mind is because of how important I think that it is to deal with issues rationally, with the rational mind. The emotional mind is clouded. Judgment becomes clouded when we're emotional, when we're angry, when we're hostile, when we're sad, depressed. So our mind has to be in a certain space in order to process these things right. And I go through phases in my life where I don't feel like I'm in a good headspace to deal with things. So I opt out. But think about these people who are in charge, the politicians. Maybe they go through a time of bad headspace, and maybe they happen to be in office while they're doing this. Maybe they don't realize exactly how much their actions affect others. If you've ever known anybody on painkillers or opiates, you'll know how much a person's mind can completely change while they're under the influence of these drugs. I've seen it happen firsthand to me, taking painkillers for my chronic pain. And this is why I don't take them. But then I've watched those around me with the same emotional outbursts, anger, feelings of resentment, hatred, people who are taking OxyContin, Vicodin. And I say this because these are some of the most commonly used pharmaceuticals. And with the amount of people who are in pain in this world, you can be assured that a majority of these professional folks who are in pain are taking some sort of a painkiller if they have pain. And these alter our way of thinking. So we're at the mercy of so many different people with different emotional outbursts at different points. It's really hard to know where to go. I mean, look at some of the politicians that are coming out on the news now. Some of the things that they're saying. These aren't new things. They're just getting caught more and more saying them. It's becoming more and more the norm for people to say most totally outrageous things. And in the past, with our dogmatic belief systems, often these ideas weren't even considered extreme, but now they are, because we're a little more liberal in our way of thinking. So if I could sum all of that up, and what I really wanted to say here was that list helps me to remember that there are other people who are out for the same reasons I am, out for the same causes. And in fact, I might not even know what a lot of those are, because I'm not sure which causes I am actually out for. I'm out for the people cause. I'm not a humanist. I'm not a nationalist. I'm not a religious person. I'm not a political person. I'm just a person who feels an obligation. I live in my time in life. This is my time and my generation. And I look back on the historical figures, Plato and Socrates, who made a difference and an impact merely by asking questions. You know, Socrates never wrote a single word. And he had to drink the hemlock and die because he was corrupting the Athens youth by asking them, what is life really about? And these are simple questions we take for granted. The freedom of speech that we take for granted now. We just have to be selective about how we pursue our thinking. And remember that each one of us is obligated to speak out. That millions of people through history have died for us to have the right to say what we need to say. But to remember that just because we have the right to say it doesn't mean it's important. And none of us are really out to judge what is and what is not important. But as a whole, we have to judge what is important, because that's the only way we're going to know where to concentrate our energy to make a difference. So, I could go on forever, but I won't. I hope everyone has a great day, and namaste to everybody. Peace and love.